It is October 1995, and we have returned to Southeast Asia, this time to explore Laos and Cambodia, hoping to find some villages where hand papermaking still exists. We have traveled to the mountainous northern region of Luang Prabang on the bank of the famous Mekong River. Long ago, the ancient name for Laos was Long Song, meaning land of a million elephants. The elephants have virtually disappeared, and we hope that hand papermaking has not vanished also. Certainly, the religious artifacts of this Buddhist country have remained in abundance. Luang Prabang is one of the old imperial capitals of Laos, and for centuries was the center of religion, arts, and culture. We see dozens of magnificent temples and pagodas, many of them gleaming with gold leaf. The interiors of the temples are heavily ornamented with religious objects surrounding the giant images of Buddha. One way we investigate the places where paper may be made by hand is to visit the marketplace of the town and see if we can find handmade paper for sale. Right now we are at the giant Dala market, the central market of Luang Prabang, and I'm starting to walk through the marketplace to see if I can find any sellers of paper. I've now found a bundle of paper here, and it looks as if it's made by hand. I'm going to examine one of the piles of paper. I'd like to buy this. How much? It's about yes. Yeah, how much for the whole bundle? Yeah, oh, yeah. Small bundle of paper for 600 keep. The next step will be to find the place where the paper was made. The lady who sold it to me is not sure exactly where. There are several different places that make paper, but our driver knows of one particular little village where there is a lady who is still making paper. We drove in this three-wheel taxi to the edge of Luang Prabang to the tiny village of Sung Kong. I learned a little more about Lao papermaking on the way here. It seems there's only one papermaking family in Luang Prabang. More paper is made in villages up in the mountains, a 4 to 5 hour trek from here, not accessible by motorcar. That paper is made by the Hmongs, a hill tribe people mainly engaged in growing poppies for opium. The paper is used for wrapping the opium after it's produced. Our guide gave us the inside story because his father was actively involved in the business. He bought opium from the Hmongs and sold it in the market, the one we just visited. We have arrived at the house of the Manapoon family. The matriarch of the family is Phom, an attractive, energetic lady of 68 years who does not look her age. The house of the Manapoon family is a very ordinary country, rural type of dwelling. You can see the paper-making molds outside with the paper drying in them. All right, we have just met Mr. Tun. He is the husband of Phom, and he and Phom are going to explain to us all of the steps of making paper. The fiber that they use is from the mulberry tree. And over here we see a very young mulberry tree. It is only 3 months old. Now when the tree reaches a height of about 3 meters, which takes about 3 years, then that is ready to be cut and the fiber stripped. Phom is now demonstrating how the fiber is stripped from the wood of the tree. They actually scorch the branches over a small fire. And Phom is demonstrating how the bark is stripped after being heated in the fire. Yeah. You can see how easily the fiber is stripped from the wood of the tree after the scorching process. We have seen this done also in Bangkok, where the koi tree is used for fiber. And again, the branches are scorched, and then the bark, the inner bark as well as the outer bark, is easily stripped off from the wood. Phom in the background is now scraping the outer bark from the inner bark. You can see that while Phone is stripping the outer bark away from the inner bark, she's also making the wide strips of bark thinner. This will facilitate the cooking, which will take place a little bit later, after she finishes what she's doing now. Ah, there's the... the paper makers are now showing us how they cook the fiber. About 2 kilos of fiber is cooked at one time in the cooking pot. They cook it first in just plain water for a few hours, and then in the last 2 hours of cooking, some ash is added. After the fiber has been sufficiently cooked and it's soft enough, then it is thoroughly rinsed, as Mr. Tun is showing us here. While he's rinsing it, you can see he pulls off a little bit more of the outer bark, which has still remained on the fiber. Mr. Tun is now showing us the beating process. He uses he uses 2 wooden mallets and beats the fiber thoroughly on a large stone surface. Yeah. Occasionally he will dip the mallets into a pail of water so as to add a little more moisture to the fiber as it's being beaten. Phone is now going to show us how she forms a sheet of paper. You can see a pail of the beaten fiber here.
It is mulberry fiber, by the way, which the Chinese call go. The Thais call this sa. And the Lao word is something like sa also. And I might add that the Japanese call this fiber kozo. The mold that Ang Phone is using is made from teak wood, and it is covered with a thin netting which she buys in the marketplace. It's actually mosquito netting that is used. So she has poured or placed a small amount of pulp down on the surface of the mold, which is floating in this little tank of water. And now she's dispersing the pulp evenly over the surface with her hands. These are fairly large sheets that she is forming. They measure about 24 inches by 31 inches. In the course of talking to us about her involvement with papermaking, Ang Phone told us that she started making paper many years ago. The history of papermaking in her family goes back more than 125 years. Her father, her grandfather, her great-grandfather were all papermakers here. There were several families making paper at that time, but they were all related, so it was like one large family with several branches who were involved in the papermaking. About 20 years ago, she stopped making paper. It was at the time of the Revolution, and it seemed that there was no longer any use for the paper. At that time, all the paper that she made was used to wrap opium. So she stopped making paper for many years. She started weaving instead. But in 1991, Laos began to be opened very slightly for tourism, and she was persuaded to start her paper-making operation up again, because it might be something that could be sold to the tourists that they were expecting. So today, she is continuing to make paper in her family's tradition, and the paper that she makes is seldom used for wrapping for opium, because that paper is made by the Hmong people themselves out in the countryside who grow the opium. Her paper instead is used to make small books. The hotel that we stayed at, for instance, had menus printed on books made from her paper. And she is trying to develop other uses for the papers that she makes. But meanwhile, she has kept alive this marvelous tradition of hand paper making here in Luang, Prabang. You can see that it's taken her quite a while to form a sheet. Occasionally she takes out little bits of fiber that are not sufficiently beaten, and she takes great care in leveling out the pulp that is floating in the water. And now she very slowly raises the mold from the pool of water, and you can see how the sheet of paper has formed on the surface of the mold. Phone will now put the mold with its newly formed sheet of paper in the sun to finish drying.
It's going to take it dry.
Yeah. 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 Phone tells us that in a single day she makes about 50 sheets of paper. In the rainy season, it is much more difficult to make this number because it takes so long for the paper to dry. When the sheet of paper is completely dry, then Phone can remove it from the mold. And she's showing us now how she's doing this. She just pushes her hand between the paper and the netting and makes it release from the screen. Yeah. That's very nice. Yeah, it's beautiful paper, and you can see how fairly consistent it is, which is not too easy to do with this poured method of sheet forming. Phone is showing us the book covers that she makes for the books that they produce, and inside of each cover you can see the outline of a leaf. This is a decorative element that is added as she forms the sheet on the mold. Inside Phone's house, we see the various members of the family very busy producing the books that they have for sale in the market. There are about 4 or 5 family members that work at this enterprise. 2 of them also work out on their farms. These people are peanut farmers. But the young girls who go to school some of the time, in their spare time, they can also help out in the family. And here they're busily gluing the books and putting in some of the decorative elements. Over here we see the son of Ang Phong, who is trimming the paper that is used in the books. The paper's been folded over, and he uses a straight edge and a very sharp knife to trim the edges of the paper. This is very much a cottage industry here, this old paper making, and the entire living room of the Manapun family is devoted to the enterprise. And on the floor we see again the glued sheets, which are drying here. We are so very pleased that An Phong and Mr. Tun have shown us all of their paper-making processes, and we want to thank them very much. In Lao, it's Hop Chai Lai Lai. Hop Chai Lai Lai.
นี่ก็เข้าใจร้ายที่ได้มาเอาไปโฆษณาอยู่อเมริกาแล้วก็เข้าใจร้าย
Cái ai cũng vậy.